Statements by ministers. The Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize the great loss experienced by our province. On November 30th, 2017, Grand Chief Ben Sylliboy passed away peacefully, surrounded by his family, community members, and the Mi'kmaq leaders. Grand Chief Sylliboy was a humble, compassionate, and generous man. He was dedicated to his family, community, the Mi'kmaq people throughout Mi'kma'ki. Born in Waikama, Ben Sylliboy grew up as one of 5 children in a family of modest means. As a young boy, he attended the residential school in Shubenacadie for 4 years. Not long after returning to his home community, he contracted tuberculosis, leading to a lengthy battle for him to regain his health. He went on to become a respected and dedicated member of his community. The dedication to improving his community and constant commitment to serve his church led to him being selected as the Mi'kmaq Grand Council Captain in 1968. In 1970, he was elected and served 9 terms as band councillor in Waikaba, and after the passing of then Grand Chief Donald Marshall in 1991, he became the Grand Chief. As a survivor of the residential school, he was active as an adult in survivors groups and was involved in the Truth and Reconciliation Committee. Throughout his life, Ben was a respected leader and statesman for the Mi'kmaq community in Canada and beyond. One of the highlights for me as Premier, Mr. Speaker, was working with Ben to pardon the late Grand Chief Gabriel Sylliboy. It was a great moment for both of us, celebrating in peace and friendship with all Nova Scotians and the Mi'kmaq people. Grand Chief Sylliboy left his wife of 49 years, Catherine Marie, 2 daughters, Michelle and Christine, as well as granddaughters Randa and Kendall, and grandson Carter. While we continue to mourn his passing, his legacy lives throughout his promotion of Mi'kmaq culture and spirituality. He truly lived the adage, we are all treaty people. I would ask that all members, after my colleagues get a chance to pass on their remarks, that we give a moment of silence for this great Nova Scotian.
The Honourable Interim Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Premier for providing our caucus with his remarks in advance. And I believe I will echo many of the words he said about Grand Chief Sylliboy. Since his passing and before, many words have been used to describe Grand Chief Ben Sylliboy. Dedicated, caring, humble, respectful, patient, and inspirational. Those are all words that describe an effective and cherished leader. And there is no doubt that is what Grand Chief Sylliboy was. But what struck me when I reflected on his life is how resilient he was. He spent 4 years in the residential school in Shubenacadie when he was just 6 years old. Then he contracted tuberculosis and fought to regain his health. But he persevered and dedicated his life to helping and guiding others. He overcame. Grand Chief Sylliboy was an active member of a residential school survivors group and in the Truth and Reconciliation Committee. He championed the establishment of home for people with intellectual disabilities in his home community. He fought for the constitutional recognition of many Mi'kmaq rights. He had a strong faith that grounded him and was the embodiment of Revelation 21, verse 7. He who overcomes will inherit these things, and I will be his God, and he will be my son. Grand Chief Ben Sylliboy will be remembered as a strong and humbled leader. The Premier noted that while we mourn his loss, Grand Chief Sylliboy's legacy will be long-lasting. His work advanced Mi'kmaq culture and spirituality, and his efforts improved the relationship between all Nova Scotians and all the Mi'kmaq people. I hope his wife Catherine Marie, his daughters, and all his family will find comfort in that, and in that the fact that he had a life well lived, that their husband, father, and grandfather was a good man. He will be missed by many. Thank you.
The Honourable Leader of the New Democratic Party.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the Premier and the Leader of the Official Opposition for taking a moment today to honour Grand Chief Ben Sylliboy's life and legacy in this House. His loss is indeed a loss to the entire province, and as Morley Google, Regional Chief of the Assembly of First Nations, has said, it's really a big loss for the nation as a whole. Through his leadership, Grand Chief Sylliboy challenged the Nova Scotia government and the Government of Canada to face the hard truths in our history and in our present, and invited us all to do better. He did that with a humble and generous but also unflinching spirit. He continued a long tradition of Mi'kmaq leaders, insisting that we honour the treaties and the spirit of peace and friendship between nations in the face of continuous betrayals by provincial and federal governments. His is an honoured legacy and a noble path. Thank you.
Now I ask that all members of this House please rise to observe a moment of silence for the passing of Grand Chief Ben Sylliboy. Thank you.